Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly captivating narrative from our source text called The Acoustic Imprint of the First Takbir. The premise here is just absolutely fascinating. What if a historical, miraculous event didn't just, fade away into the past, but actually left a permanent, measurable acoustic signature embedded right in the physical fabric of our planet? We're going to look at the data, the claims, and the incredible scientific methodology proposed in this text to see how nature itself might act as a giant historical recording device. Okay, let's dive into this. The source text frames this entire narrative as a profound scientific mystery. Imagine you're standing on the desolate, freezing white expanse of Greenland. The researchers in our story are drilling down into the Earth's ancient history, pulling up ice cores from literally 3,000 meters below the surface. Now, they were just looking for answers about ancient climates, but the text suggests they stumbled onto an anomaly that totally challenges the line between physical science and historical faith. I mean, could an ancient sound wave actually be frozen in time? To really get this investigation, we need to meet the two main guys driving the research at the EMICE Ice Core Research Center. First up, we've got Dr. Yahya, the lead paleoclimatologist. He's deeply curious, super open-minded, and totally open to the idea that nature holds the absolute truth of history, including religious events. Then, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum is his colleague, Dr. Bernt Lundgren. He's a strict, materialist Swedish glaciologist. Bernt relies purely on hard, observable data. He completely rejects anything outside standard physical mechanics. So right away, we have this classic clash of worldviews, right? Faith-driven inquiry versus strict scientific materialism. So as they're pulling up these massive cylinders of ice, which contain basically 100,000 years of atmospheric history, they hit a very specific depth, exactly 1,400.02 meters down. And right away, the researchers notice something is fundamentally different about the structural integrity and the trapped air bubbles at this precise millimeter of the core. It absolutely demands a closer look. When Dr. Yahya and his team run radiocarbon dating and analyze the calcium dust particles in this specific layer, the timeline they get is, well, it's stunning. The ice at 1,400.02 meters dates precisely to the years 570 to 571 AD. According to the text, this creates this incredible convergence of timelines. It aligns physical data perfectly with major historical and religious milestones. Historically speaking, 570 AD is known in the Arabian Peninsula as the Year of the Elephant, which was marked by a massive military invasion of Mecca. Religiously, it marks the birth year of the Prophet Muhammad. And scientifically, this is the exact moment an unexplained anomaly was permanently locked into the Greenland ice. So what exactly was this anomaly? Well, our source text explains that the ancient air bubbles trapped inside this 570 AD layer were totally unlike the layers above or below it. The internal pressure of these bubbles was 1.7 times higher than normal. Now, for a paleoclimatologist, that's a massive red flag. It suggests that a colossal shockwave must have violently compressed the atmosphere across the entire northern hemisphere before the water froze, permanently trapping that high-pressure air inside the ice. Driven by this wild discovery, Dr. Yahya kicks off a highly technical process to literally listen to the trapped air. First, he uses laser Raman spectroscopy to measure the microscopic vibrations of the trapped gas molecules. Then, he feeds that data into specialized acoustic transduction software designed to convert those tiny pressure variations back into audible sound waves. So, he hits play, waiting to hear what the atmosphere actually sounded like 1,400 years ago. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that the output described in the text is practically impossible. As the audio plays, it's not some chaotic sound of thunder or a volcanic eruption. Through the static, a deep, distant, but undeniably clear human voice emerges from the speakers, saying the Arabic phrase, Allahu Akbar. The text specifically notes that the acoustic signature is incredibly precise. The first syllable, the alif, is stretched for exactly 0.4 seconds. That perfectly matches mad, which is the strict phonetic rule used in classical Arabic recitation, known as tajweed. Let that sink in. An ancient human voice, perfectly articulated, pulled straight out of Arctic ice. Naturally, the materialist, Dr. Bernt Lundgren, absolutely refuses to believe his ears. He immediately assumes this has to be a case of confirmation bias. He actually accuses Yahya of tampering with the acoustic transduction software, basically saying he programmed the algorithm to hunt for human speech patterns and just spit out a religious phrase. Bernt is determined to prove that if you feed any random atmospheric pressure data into the software, it's going to eventually generate a similar sound. So, to debunk the finding, Bernt runs a rigorous control test. He takes data from 50 completely random layers of ice spanning 1,000 years before and after the 570 AD mark, and he runs them all through the exact same algorithm. The results? Well, those 50 random layers only produce hissing and crackling, which are easily erased by a basic audio filter. But when he runs the 570 AD layer again, that clear phrase returns. In fact, when Bernd tries to forcefully filter out the human sound, the frequency's formant, its acoustic fingerprint, is so distinct and powerful that it literally cannot be deleted without destroying the entire audio file. Faced with this undeniable, reproducible data, Bernd is incredibly frustrated. The strict parameters of his very own scientific method have basically cornered him, and this leads to a really profound response from Dr. Yahya, who looks at him and says, "You called the data truth, but when the truth came out, you called it wrong." It's a really powerful moment in our source text, perfectly highlighting the tension that bubbles up when empirical data challenges a researcher's fundamental worldview. Section 1. The Tree Ring Witness, corroborating data from the Anatolian Dendrochronology Lab. Let's move to and see how this builds, because the investigation certainly doesn't stop in Greenland. Yahya remembers this strange report from a completely different scientific discipline in Turkey, so he acquires a sample of an ancient juniper tree, specifically isolating the tree ring that grew during the year 570 AD. When he runs an X-ray micro-CT scan on this wood, he finds a bizarre fluctuation in the wood's density. He applies that exact same acoustic transduction process, and incredibly, the text states it produces the exact same acoustic signature of Allahu Akbar. But this time, overlapping the main audio is a subtle secondary frequency forming the phrase Subhanallah. I mean, just think about the sheer geographical and physical impossibility being proposed here for a second. How on earth could a sound wave become trapped simultaneously in a freezing glacier in the Arctic Circle and in the growing bark of a tree in the Mediterranean? They're separated by thousands of miles, yet matching perfectly in the year 570 AD. What kind of physical mechanism could possibly explain that? To answer this, Dr. Yahya introduces a concept to Bernd known as acoustic nucleation. This is actually a real physical phenomenon where if a sound is incredibly loud, like exceeding 150 decibels, the sheer acoustic pressure forces atmospheric water vapor to condense into physical droplets. The sound waves literally act as nuclei, creating sound-driven rain. So, according to Yahya's theory, an unimaginably loud sound in the atmosphere in 570 AD didn't just pass through the air, it physically altered the water and the entire environment it touched. And this brilliantly illustrates the text's unique synthesis of history, biology, and global acoustics. Yahya looks at the historical accounts of 570 AD, which describe a massive flock of abil birds attacking the invading army in Mecca. He calculates that these birds flapping their wings 12 to 15 times a second creates a mechanical frequency perfectly matching the 432 Hz musical A note. Now, why does that matter? Well, because 432 Hz aligns exactly with the average pitch of the crowd shouting the Takbir. The narrative suggests this biological and human synergy triggered the 55th harmonic of the Earth's natural electromagnetic frequency, the Schumann resonance. This massive energy created a standing wave in the Earth's ionosphere, literally ringing the entire planet like a bell, until that vibration locked permanently into the polar ice and those tree rings. Still skeptical, of course, Dr. Bernd tries to prove this was just a mechanical, reproducible freak of nature. He sets up an experiment in a sound chamber. He blasts a 432 Hz tone at an ear-shattering 150 decibels while rapidly freezing the water inside the chamber to trap the sound waves just as the theory suggests. But when they run the laser scan on this artificially created ice, the result is pure silence. Nothing is recorded. The mechanical recreation completely fails. So, why did it fail? In our source text, Dr. Yahya explains to his colleague that 432 Hz is just a raw frequency. But the sound trapped in the Greenland ice possessed a spiritual envelope, a completely unique, irreproducible signature. The text asserts that the divine command, or kun, which translates to be, contains a specific energy that transcends mere physical acoustics. You just can't use a machine in a lab to synthetically recreate the exact historical and spiritual intersection of bird wings, human voices, and divine intervention. A machine can make noise, sure, but it can't forge a historical imprint. Section 2. Nature's Permanent Signature. The European Geosciences Union presentation. This all leads up to the absolute climax of the narrative. Dr. Yahya is invited to present his unprecedented findings to the scientific community at the European Geosciences Union. Standing in front of 500 of the world's leading scientists, he prepares to show them exactly how historical and religious events leave empirical signatures. For his final slide, Dr. Yahya takes the acoustic waveform extracted from the Greenland ice and the one from the Turkish tree ring. He overlaps them right there on the screen, because they're two perspectives of the exact same global acoustic event. Merging them creates a complete three-dimensional geometric pattern of the sound, which is known in physics as a Lissajous figure. So the crucial point is what this visualization actually revealed. As the two waveforms intersected and folded into a 3D Lissajous figure on that massive projection screen, the geometry didn't just form random squiggles. According to the text, the visual representation of the audio data formed the clear, distinct Arabic calligraphy of the phrase Muhammad Rasulullah. The visual data itself spelled out the message. 500 scientists sat in absolute, stunned silence. It is right here that Dr. Bert Lundgren, the lifelong skeptic and strict materialist, undergoes a complete transformation. He stands up in the dead silent auditorium and delivers this incredibly powerful realization. He says, "I thought ice was nature's diary, but Yahya proved today some pages of this diary are written by Allah's hand, and to read them, you don't need a microscope, you need Iman," referring to faith. The sheer weight of the data had fundamentally shifted his entire worldview. Our source text concludes with this really fascinating epilogue. Today, that exact piece of 570 AD ice doesn't just sit in a dark freezer somewhere. It's proudly displayed in a glass box at the entrance of the research center. Visitors can actually press a button and hear the sound extracted from the trapped air. As Dr. Yahya notes, it's not a recording. It's a literal playback of a 1,400-year-old moment in time. An acoustic fossil of the exact moment the sky and earth altered the planet's chemistry. This explainer takes us through a remarkable thought experiment, blending science, history, and theology, and it leaves us with a truly provocative question to ponder. If historical and spiritual events leave permanent physical signatures locked in the environment, what else is written in the very atoms of our planet? What other ancient truths are quietly waiting in the ice, the trees, and the earth, just waiting for the right technology and perhaps the right perspective to finally be heard?